doesn't seem, at this point, to many people, like a team player for the firm, for the royal family. He seems like he's going his own way, so why should he lead it?
I think we've seen I think it's left a very distasteful approach how the firm supported, well, I like the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew, the way he was sheltered and protected, and he was only stripped of his titles when it's apparently, in my opinion, seemed quite obvious what was going to happen next. Is that
I'm sure what we crossing Sussex's
represent?
minds.
Is that the kind of integrity that I don't think it represents me and my values.
But William, what about William? I mean, William has a superb future. He balances the diplomatic with the private.
I have always been very pro-monarchy with a small p and a small m, which is shrinking by the day, and I think I represent millions of people. If you really want to keep this institution from being torn apart, which I think it's coming, it feels like the end of days, I think there needs to be a rebrand, there needs to be something fresh and a new approach. And honestly,
William would give a new approach, and also he would be devoted,
I think
and
Prince
also
Harry
his
is
family.
so much more
William's
relatable.
Family
represents, like, I have mixed heritage daughters. I cried my eyes out at the wedding, and my girls were like, the dress is fabulous, but I don't know why you're so emotional. I'm like, you don't understand what this represents.
No,
you know, my
represent,
family are part of the old empire and Commonwealth,
no,
and it is so unifying to
But the empire is one thing
family.
in the past. The Commonwealth is something that's very important today. The monarchy has to be head of the Commonwealth, in my opinion, because first
and who represents that better than this diverse family with Duchess Meghan?
You couldn't have a rotating head, and you wouldn't get a bureaucrat. So it makes sense to have the king.
Could I also say one point?
Yes.
In terms of line of succession, we have had. It's been quite shocking to see Prince Andrew stripped of his titles in order to preserve the family and the monarchy, and we have, I would say, the Queen Elizabeth II is loved by this country.
She is indeed.
Whether you support the monarchy or not, we have such a respect. She is a definition of duty, honour and service. And she wouldn't be one of the best queens or monarchs we've ever had in this country if her father did not succeed, who was not supposed to be.
Right, so she only came to be there.
Because of a twist of fate. And thank goodness that a younger brother, who was also underestimated with a stammer, who led this country through World War II, produced one of the best heirs. And maybe Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet will do the same for us.
What about it?
After watching that clip, what immediately stands out is the framing of the conversation. The discussion begins with the suggestion that someone who chooses a different path from the institution is somehow not a team player. But that assumption deserves to be examined much more closely, because stepping away from a system that you believe is flawed doesn't necessarily mean abandoning responsibility. In many cases, it means confronting uncomfortable truths. And that's exactly where the conversation around Prince Harry and Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, becomes far more complicated than the simple narrative often pushed in certain royal discussions. For years, critics have tried to frame Harry and Duchess Meghan as people who simply walked away from duty. But if you actually examine their actions since leaving the official royal structure, the picture looks very different. Instead of disappearing into private luxury, they have continued working on humanitarian causes, mental health awareness, veterans support, and media projects focused on social issues. So the question isn't really whether they are team players. The real question is, what kind of team are we talking about? Because the monarchy isn't just a family. It's an institution often referred to as the firm. And institutions, like any powerful organizations, sometimes prioritize protecting their image above addressing deeper structural problems. That's why the mention of Prince Andrew in that clip is so significant. For years, the royal family faced enormous criticism over how the situation involving Andrew was handled. Many observers believed the institution moved slowly, cautiously, and only acted decisively once public pressure became overwhelming. Titles were eventually removed, but critics argued that the response came after years of reputational damage. And that moment raised a very uncomfortable question. If the monarchy claims to represent values like integrity, honour and service, why did it appear so hesitant to act when those values were being questioned? That contrast is exactly why some supporters of Harry and Duchess Meghan believe their decision to step back from royal duties makes more sense than critics are willing to admit. Because from their perspective, they were witnessing how the institution responded to certain controversies while simultaneously expecting absolute silence and loyalty from them. And silence was never something Harry was likely to choose. From the moment he began speaking openly about mental health, trauma, and the impact of losing his mother, Harry showed a willingness to challenge traditions that many previous royals avoided discussing publicly. His advocacy around mental health, veterans' issues and grief has helped reshape conversations that were once considered taboo within royal circles. And Duchess Meghan brought her own voice into that space. Long before joining the royal family, she had been an outspoken advocate for women's rights, racial equality, and humanitarian causes. Her activism didn't begin with royal life, and it certainly didn't end when she left the official structure. Yet, for a period of time, it often felt like the focus of public debate shifted away from their work and toward constant criticism of their choices. That's why the idea that Harry isn't a team player feels overly simplistic. Because when you look at the broader picture, Harry and Duchess Meghan didn't stop serving the public. They simply chose to do it outside the rigid framework of royal protocol. And in many ways, that independence has allowed them to speak more freely about issues that matter deeply to them. Meanwhile, the conversation in the clip shifts toward another royal figure, often presented as the future of the monarchy, Prince William. The speaker praises William's balance between diplomacy and privacy, suggesting that he represents a fresh direction for the institution. But here's the interesting part. The monarchy has always depended on a mix of different personalities and approaches. Some members operate strictly within tradition, while others push boundaries and challenge the system. And historically, both roles have played a part in shaping the monarchy's evolution. Look at the reign of Queen Elizabeth II. She became queen under extraordinary circumstances after the abdication of King Edward VIII. That moment completely reshaped the monarchy and forced the royal family to rethink how it presented itself to the public. Her father, King George VI, was never expected to become king. Yet he ended up leading the country through one of the most difficult periods in modern history. The monarchy survived those moments precisely because it adapted. And adaptation sometimes requires uncomfortable conversations. That's why the debate about Harry and Duchess Meghan isn't simply about whether they followed tradition. It's about whether the monarchy can accommodate voices that challenge its internal culture. Because when institutions refuse to evolve, they risk becoming disconnected from the people they claim to represent. The clip also touches on another key idea, the future of the Commonwealth. For many people across former British territories, the Commonwealth represents cooperation and shared history. But it also carries complicated memories tied to the legacy of empire. Duchess Meghan's presence in the royal family once symbolised something powerful to many people around the world. She represented diversity, modernity, and the possibility that the monarchy could reflect the multicultural reality of the Commonwealth today. The speaker in the clip even describes crying during Harry and Duchess Meghan's wedding because of what that moment represented. For many viewers, that wedding felt like a turning point, a sign that the monarchy might truly be entering a new era. And when Harry and Duchess Meghan later stepped back from royal duties, That sense of possibility felt suddenly interrupted. But here's something that often gets overlooked. Leaving the royal institution didn't erase what that moment represented. If anything, it sparked even bigger conversations about race, media narratives, and the pressure placed on individuals who enter one of the most scrutinized families in the world. And since stepping away, Harry and Duchess Meghan have continued building their own platform to address issues they believe matter. Through charitable initiatives, storytelling projects and advocacy work, they've focused on topics like mental health, digital safety and social justice. In other words, their public service didn't disappear. It simply changed form. The monarchy itself now stands at a crossroads. Some people believe it needs to modernize faster, others believe its strength lies in maintaining strict traditions. But the reality is that institutions survive when they learn to absorb criticism rather than reject it. Harry and Duchess Meghan represent one vision of how public figures can use their platform to challenge outdated systems and advocate for change. William represents another approach working from within the structure to gradually shape its future. And the truth is, history shows that both types of influence often play a role in transforming institutions over time. Near the end of the clip, the conversation briefly shifts toward the next generation. Names like Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet are mentioned as reminders that the royal story doesn't end with the current generation. History has proven again and again that the future of the monarchy rarely unfolds the way people expect. Unexpected figures sometimes shape the most important chapters. Unexpected voices sometimes drive the biggest changes. And sometimes the individuals who challenge institutions from the outside end up influencing them just as much as those who remain inside. So when people debate whether Harry and Duchess Meghan are team players, they might be asking the wrong question. Because leadership isn't always about fitting neatly into an existing system. Sometimes leadership is about recognizing when that system needs to evolve. And whether one supports the monarchy fully, partially, or not at all, it's impossible to deny that Harry and Duchess Meghan have forced a global conversation about accountability, modernization, and the human cost of royal life. That conversation is still unfolding, and in many ways it may shape the future of the monarchy just as much as any official title ever could.